All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pitch Feedback Live, where we take a look at real community pitches submitted to us and give feedback in real time. So we can all enjoy this learning experience together and improve upon our pitching as a Tongal family. So my name is Maddie Mindling. Joining me today is Director of Production and longtime producer here at Tongal, Iwanyk. Welcome. Thank you for joining us as usual.
Hello again.
Stephen, you've been with Tongal for 5 years, 6 years?
5 years.
5 years. Okay, so it's fair to say that you have many years of experience reviewing and evaluating pitches alongside our clients, and you're more than happy to share your wealth of insights with us today.
I just skimmed through everything. Honestly, I haven't really taken an in-depth look.
It is kind of crazy to think that it's already September too, because last time we did this, I think it was middle of summer, July. We try to do these every few months. So I guess that means that holiday content is on the horizon.
Yep, I'm absolutely about to launch some Christmas stuff. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's very strange. So we do have actually one success story for you guys to share with all of you from our last Pitch Feedback Live session. Elliot Reddy, a filmmaker based in Ireland, had his Nutella pitch reviewed on our last episode of Pitch Feedback Live, and he applied the feedback that we gave him, and he got his very first green light on our Back to the Future animation project. So nice job, Elliot. We're really happy to see that. Glad to see that you came to one of our sessions and were able to apply that feedback and get your first green light.
Awesome.
So yeah, and I think it's just an example of coming to these live streams are really a great way to learn from others. And I think as we often talk about, there's really no perfect science to creating a good pitch, but there are some key things that you'll want to communicate to the client and that you'll want to include to make sure that they really understand your vision and your plan for the project. So today we're going to be taking a look at 3 pitches. 2 of them are from the same project, so I think that'll be kind of interesting. I don't think we've ever looked at 2 pitches for the same brief before. And another one from a filmmaker who is only 13 years old, who is on our platform, who did a really awesome pitch for a recent NFL project. So thank you to the filmmakers who've graciously volunteered their work for the purpose of this live stream. We really appreciate it. We know it is not easy to have your work dissected and evaluated in front of others, but rest assured these pitches are really awesome, which will make it even harder for us to find some more of that nuanced feedback that goes beyond just our basic 101 pitch tips. We're going to be taking a look at, kind of the subtler adjustments that you guys can make to really take your pitch to that next level. But if you want to learn the basics, we do have a lot of great resources on our platform, which I can show you guys here. We have our Tongal 101 section. Let me go ahead and pull that up real fast. So here's our treatments that you guys can use. We also have a number of resources around, how to pitch on Tongal, some post-production resources, as well as social video best practices. If you're pitching for a project that is asking for a social suite of content, videos for Instagram, for YouTube, this is a great resource for just learning about kind of best creative practices for that type of content.
I'll also call that out too. I think it's not enough people pay attention to the best practices. I think when I'd say probably like 2-3 years ago, there was a lot of attention paid to Facebook best practices as they started to really dominate the video advertising market. And I think that once the novelty of that wore off, and as they started to switch to more ads with sound, people started paying less attention to it. And I've noticed that at times in pitches where people just kind of, take a singular approach to things. But I think it's still really, really important to pay attention to those best practices for social platforms, because at the end of the day, for the most part, still people are not engaging with your video with sound if you're on a social platform. And I don't know that everyone really takes account of that when they put their pitches together. And it's really important.
Yeah, and I do notice in links to past work too. I think it's always important, even if you haven't made something for Instagram or for Facebook feed before, I think it is really good to just re-edit some of the content that's already in your portfolio to make some shorter pieces of content to show how you can tell a story in that amount of time, and putting a really strong hook, a creative hook at the beginning of those videos so people will want to stay on for, the full 5 seconds or 15 seconds, however long that video is, because it is, I think we see a lot of filmmakers who have longer pieces of work in their portfolio coming out for social video projects, and we want them to put their best foot forward. So just a few, I think, guidelines here, and this is meant to be a collective learning experience. Feel free to ask questions throughout in the comments. We will be checking those. Hi, Denver. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. And if you like us to consider one of your pitches for our next live stream, feel free to reach out to us at info@tongal.com. You can say hi, introduce yourself. You don't have to have questions if you don't have them right now. A few rules before we get started, just keep it friendly, be supportive, and apply what you learn on your next pitch, and that's it. For those of you who may not be familiar with Tongal, we are an open creative platform. You can pitch on creative opportunities with some of the world's biggest brands and studios. It doesn't matter where you live, where you're based, where you went to film school, as long as you have the skills and the know-how. And we want to do like a quick kind of introductory to some new projects that are populating our platform right now. We are seeing sort of an influx of TrueView ad projects. TrueView is an ad format for YouTube. It's particularly TrueView for Action, which is a clickable video format. It's sort of like direct response. And it lets customers immediately engage or take an action from the video. So they can ask for like a quote, they can click on a button to add something to their cart. So this is a new type of ad format that we're really, it's been a while, it's been around for I think a few years, but they have optimized it and really updated the format. And we're starting to see a lot more mid-sized brands, wanting content for TrueView for Action, especially smaller retailers, businesses that are really trying to get the highest amount of conversion per their ad spend. And we actually came up with some really great creative best practices around creating content for this particular type of ad format. So I'll go ahead and pull those up here. And you can find this on our social best practices page. You can see them here.
And I'd say too, like there's a subtle difference here between sort of like making a commercial spot, a video, whatever you want to call it, for a specific product and making TrueView for Action, because even with direct response as of the past, whether it be broadcast or online, it was sort of you're asking someone directly to do something right away. This makes it so much easier. But it also means that you subtly have to think about how you're going to set your video up for success if someone can engage with it immediately.
Yeah, it is. I think it all comes down to creative there. How do you hook people in? How do you get that message across really quickly so they understand? What visuals do you use to put that brand forward? But it is really all about trying to get them to click on that call to action. And these videos play within the skippable ad format, so it's even more important that you try to capture their attention really quickly because users have the option to skip the ads. Keep an eye out for more of those projects. I can go ahead and actually pull up our project page so you guys can see a few of them that are currently on our platform. Let me see here. I'll point them out to you. So this one, Closer School, is a TrueView project. So you'll see anything with the TrueView in the banner here. We Buy Cars is another one that's open right now. And you can see TrueView is right there in the banner. So keep an eye out. I think this is a great ad format to learn and to really corner the market on as a filmmaker. Oh, sorry, I was not sharing that screen, was I?
Nope.
Nope. Sorry, guys. Steven, always tell me I can only handle so many screens at once.
I thought it was about to come up.
Okay.
No, I mean, to Maddie's point, though, there may be 15, 20, 30 of these coming down the line. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities. Because the format is pretty straightforward, most of these projects are going to follow the same format. So if you're able to really lock down a way to pitch on these, to succeed on these, you could knock out many of them. And I think the opportunity is going to continue through the end of the year too. So even though I'm looking at, 15, 20, 30 something in the short term, there's going to be a lot of these coming down the line. And they're relatively easy to execute on the whole, I'd say. Obviously, like each project is different. Each project's got a different ask. But if you can figure out TrueView for action, you're going to put yourself in a really good spot.
Yeah, and it is becoming a more popular ad format, especially for mid-sized brands. So again, if you can learn it on Tongal and apply it elsewhere too, I mean, I think that's great. But yeah, now that I have the screen pulled up here, you can see that the TrueView is in each of the banners that apply to these projects. So just keep an eye out for that. All right. So a few other things just before we dive in. A quick word on the show's format. We'll be asking 3 essential questions when reviewing each of these pitches. These are questions that we came up with to help get you into the mindset of our producers and our clients as they're taking a look at the pitches that are coming in. And hopefully you can start asking yourselves these questions as well as you start to work on your next pitch. Stephen, do you want to speak real quickly just to like the different lenses from which clients and producers are looking at pitches?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, the first thing that producers are really looking at, I think, are like, does this filmmaker have the capability to execute, right? At the end of the day, the clients oftentimes, if they're not producing content themselves, are looking for some expertise from Tongal's end, right? They may not have a good way to really ascertain whether or not this idea that someone's pitching is something that they can actually execute. So we're often looking at it from that perspective. And I think that the other thing we're looking for is like really the potential here, right? Even if this pitch feels like it might be a bit of a miss, I want to make sure that the client can see that if it feels like a miss, but the potential is there and we can reshape it a little bit as we jump into pre-production, then we can move forward with it. So we're trying to help them see the potential in the pitch as a whole and how it speaks to the brand. The clients, I think, tend to be very, very heavily focused on the creative and the branding, how the product's shown, how the messaging is conveyed. This is a generalization, but they tend to be a little bit more literal, especially if they're not making content, right? If you're looking at a sci-fi project, they make content day in, day out. So they kind of get it. But if you're doing a TrueView for action project, and we're talking about like We Buy Cars or a fashion brand, it's not necessarily the case that the clients you're working with there are making content day in, day out. And so the expertise they bring to the table is focused entirely on the messaging on the product. And so those are the 2 angles of which we sort of come in to look at pitches. And I think at the end of the day, if that potential's there, if that messaging can work with this approach, if the product is going to shine in this approach, that's what, from those 2 combined lenses, you're going to get a successful pitch out of.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, just context to have, as people are kind of thinking about, who are they speaking to, who's their audience, when they're creating these pitches. So they want to both kind of check the boxes of things that you're looking at and check the boxes of the things that the clients are looking at. So with that, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into our very first pitch. We're going to actually look at the brief first, just very quickly, because we kind of just want to walk you through the process and kind of give you a sense of our thought process and how you should be looking at a brief and some of the things that you should be taking away from a brief to include in your pitch. And from there, we'll give our feedback. So the first pitch we're going to take a look at is by Ian. It's for the Burlington Fall Shopping Season Animated Video Suite. Stephen, did you work on this project? I can't remember.
I did not. Okay. I reviewed this with all projects, so I'm quite well familiar with it. But the first things that stand out to me here are like it's animated. Yep, animated. But as you scroll down, it's really short, 10 to 15 second videos. Mm-hmm. It's 4x5, so it's clearly for social.
Right.
So text is going to be a little bit more important. The visual is going to be a little bit more important. Because it's for Burlington, the product is going to be very important. So even though this does not explicitly say that you have to feature product, there's some risk if you're not directly featuring product. So it's something to think about as you're rolling through this. And then if I'm looking at animation, I want to look at the timeline, and here on timeline, if you scroll up a little bit, we sort of call out that this is an incredibly fast-moving timeline.
Yes, I noticed that. And they are looking for 2D and motion graphics specifically because of the timeline.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm an animator here, or if I can do animation, if I can do motion graphics, I want to kind of see like what I have to work with and how that might shape my approach. When I first took a look at this, I was thinking, all right, there's a lot of product. It's really short form. It's basically direct response because you're sort of asking people to go to the store and buy this right away or take advantage of this sale. So it's probably motion graphics, right? And so how can I do something really interesting with motion graphics?
Yeah, specifically the CTA here is actually less about digital sales and actually getting people to find a store near them. If you look at just the objectives here, it's asking to drive in-store consumer traffic. So the CTAs that that they'd like you to include, it seems like they're optional here, but find a store, find your store, find a store near you. So how do you communicate that message about, actually finding a location near you? And also, they provided 3 product concepts for each video, and specifically asked the filmmakers to highlight how they plan to incorporate each product theme in their treatment. So if you go to the background section here, you can see video 1. They want something about their jeans and denims for the whole family, and then include the price tag on there. Video 2, active for the family under $15, so that's more active wear. Video 3 is focused on their baby merchandise. So it seems like they cover a bunch of different products for babies. And then also they seem to be like pretty open to including like the price tags as kind of like a fun element on these videos as well. So we'll be taking a look at how 2 of our filmmakers, since we're looking at 2 pitches related to this particular brief, approached this. Also, I don't know if this is kind of interesting to you, Stephen, but they were really specific on their tone. Usually we see in this section here, like fun, inspiring, witty. And here they really have like a very clear sense of their tone of voice.
I mean, I'll be honest here. This is helpful information, but for a 10 to 15 second animated piece, fun, colorful, dynamic, inspiring is probably all you need. So I think, you can read between the lines here, but I don't know in this case that it impacts the creative that much. Right,
because it's going to be so short. Hi, James. Nice to see you. Sorry, just want to say hi. Also, I thought this is like more of a criticism on the brief itself, which I think is totally fair here because, we're only human, but we do try to provide you with as much information as possible so you guys can make the best pitch possible. The ask for VO in the script was a little bit buried for me because I did see. It's funny because I saw in the 2 pitches that we looked at that they included VO scripts and some VO samples. And I was like, oh, that's weird because it's for social. It should be kind of more standoff. And there's actually, clearly it shows that they read through the entire pitch because it is kind of buried in this section here. So I thought that was sort of interesting. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first pitch from Ian. Pull that up here. Oops. Where did that go? Oh, actually, we're going to look at his. Sorry, we're going to look at his samples to past work first, because that's typically what we do from a producer angle. Is just go to your past links and look at some of the past work that you submitted to show that you guys can kind of execute on this pitch. So we're going to go ahead and watch his first video here.
To drive innovation within the digital media space, marketers can now have ongoing dialogue with their audiences in real time. Last year, there were 1.27 billion website visits to car brand sites in the Big 5 markets, offering agencies an exciting opportunity to deliver more personal and data-driven marketing.
So I think we can stop it there. What I'm saying right off the bat here is like this animation style could totally work, right? It's 2D, but it's largely motion graphics. It's pretty simple. It's colorful. It's dynamic. Like I'm liking it. If you go to the actual pitch, though, one thing I wanted to call out in this is the actual
the pitch
pitch itself. Yeah.
Sure.
there's I guess I'd call it sort of like user experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
No. I want to see the actual submission because
Oh no,
I want to point out.
I don't have that queued up. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. So in the actual past work links that this pitch included, I saw a mistake that I see pretty frequently in pitches where someone copies the link unknowingly starting their video at like 27 seconds in or a minute and 30 seconds in. Basically, they're just pasting the link wrong. And so from a user experience standpoint, it's a minor thing, right? When I clicked this link in the original pitch, I literally started at 27 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a client's not savvy, they might be a little confused, or they might wonder, is this purposeful? Is this moment the moment that the filmmaker wants me to look at? And so it's a little confusing. And when you're thinking about the fact that someone has to look at a lot of pitches,
Mm-hmm.
those little stumbling blocks are totally unnecessary. And it's not really a critique on this particular pitch. It's very common. People unknowingly copy their links. They start to watch their own video. They're like, all right, this is cool. I could use this one. They copy and paste. But then, I'm 90 seconds in, I'm 10 seconds in. And again, it kind of throws me off. And there are these subtle things, I think, in human nature where someone has sort of a negative experience with a pitch and all of a sudden it flavors the way they're looking at everything else. They wonder, like, is this person a little sloppy? And it's not something you need, especially when oftentimes the past links and the past work is where somebody starts. So I just want to call it out because I do see it pretty frequently.
No, that's a good call. I didn't even know that could happen. I didn't know it would hold your timestamp when you're copy pasting a link. So
yeah,
that's new information to me.
If you go down to share, which is I think where usually people do it, when you hit share at the bottom of that screen, that YouTube screen that you're on, it'll actually give you the option to share the link or to start from a certain point. Starting from a certain point can be really helpful, especially if your past work is within a video that someone else made, right? Maybe you did the animated sequence, but somebody did the live action.
Right.
But if you're not going to start at the beginning of a video, I'd offer some context.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think just from a creative standpoint, this is clearly an explainer video, so it's very information heavy. The information is pretty dry, and I think that they do a great job of just conveying that in a really cool visual way. But of course, we're making something for social here, so we need to see that hook. We need to see, the how you tell a story within that time frame of 10, 15 seconds. So again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is just really look at your links, put the ones that you feel are kind of most similar to the format forward for animation. And if you don't have something like that, maybe recut something that's already in your portfolio so we can really see how you navigate that ask. Anything else, Stephen, on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to, for me, like context. There are a number of different links that feel like this here too, but a lot of them are explainers. Mm-hmm. And explainers aren't necessarily hugely different, but if I have to make a 10 or 15 second commercial, and I'm usually doing 2-minute long explainers, I think it's really nice to sort of talk about like how I would do things differently, or what about this video really applies to the whole plane.
Are you in a flight path?
I live on a flight path. All right, so there you go.
You live on a runway, basically.
I live on a runway. This is the control center.
Yeah, you're actually controlling the landings at LAX right now as we speak.
But no, I think I think it's really important to help somebody understand, like, if you've only done explainers before, how would you do a 10 to 15 second video differently? It's not that you can't, but again, if a client doesn't always make content, they might just think this isn't relevant. They haven't done a 15-second commercial before.
Right, and that could be, I think, a make or break too, just because they really want to own that. They really want to do a great job within that format, and so just not seeing it, just it's you may once you're given the opportunity be amazing at it, but there's just no certainty. So I would say, if you've made a 2-minute explainer before, make just do something for fun, make something in your portfolio that's 10 to 15 seconds using animated. It could be just a spec commercial. Even I think it's totally worth it, and I think it'll put you. It'll definitely kind of remove that doubt from the client.
Yeah, it might actually be nice to kind of talk about like director's cuts. Like a little secret here. Oftentimes people include a link to the actual spot that they made for someone. And that's great. If it's a great spot, then, no questions asked, don't need to do anything. But oftentimes you're working with a client wants you to do A, B, and C, and it feels like the spot isn't the best version of itself, right? There's nothing wrong with including a director's cut to something. Or if you didn't do a 15-second cut down of that minute-long video, make one, right? At the end of the day, the past work links partly show that you've worked with other clients before and done good work, but they also just partly show like you can do the job. So if you've done a 2-minute video and you want to show that you can do a 10 or a 15 or a 30 or some other format, recut it, right? If you're going to be able to use that link in a whole bunch of pitches, it's worth your time.
Yep. And I think this is another great example of just contextualizing your links. You have a number of for that specific field in the submission, hold for plain, you can write comments to the client and say, I'm specifically including this link because of X, Y, and Z. And so, for example, if you're submitting to a food and beverage spot, you don't have any food and beverage work in your portfolio, but you do have some tabletop, you do have some work that has some really, wonderful like close-ups of other products that, are kind of high-end, high production value, like include those and explain why you're including them specifically, if it's not exactly in that vertical.
Yeah. And again, the past work is good.
Yeah.
I saw this and I was like, this person can totally execute here. But it's about removing some of those uncertainties.
One thing I noticed is that they did include some live action links, and this both of the filmmakers for the Burlington project included some live action in their past links. When do you think it is useful to include live action for an animation project?
I'd say live action is generally solid if it shows that you can tell the right kind of story. Maybe you've, and I think this was the case, with this pitch, but like maybe you've only done 2-minute long explainer videos animated, but you've done some 15, 30-second commercials with live action. So if you include that link, it shows like, look, I can still do commercial spots. For animation, I've done this, but I can do commercial spots. And this answers your question about whether or not I can execute in short form. So I'd include them if they're relevant in that case, or I'd include them if they're really, really good. If it's just like, this is other work I've done, it's not exactly relevant. And so I'd personally go with like 2 or 3 highly relevant links than like all of your past work, especially if that other stuff doesn't really say a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. So this leads us to our second question that we ask ourselves, and we want you guys to ask yourselves, is does the pitch address the requirements laid out in the brief? So when we looked at the brief, we had the objective section, then there was the tone, the audience, and most importantly, the executional mandatories. I highly recommend when you guys are going through the brief and after you make your pitch and you're ready, before you hit that submit button, go back to the executional mandatories and just double check that you hit everything on that list. So we'll go ahead and go through Ian's pitch here.
All right. Can I just say I love this pitch?
Yes.
For many reasons. For many reasons, I love this pitch. I mean, I already mentioned that I like the past work. I think it's, it's exactly the kind of work that I expected to see out of a pitch on this kind of project. I can see why ultimately it may not have been chosen by Burlington, but as we'll see as we flip through this, it's a really cool approach to 2D animation. I wish it was something that people did more often. I think as we get there, I'll probably elaborate on it a little bit more.
Yeah, I do like that he included like the specs here on the cover page, just kind of reinforcing like this is, what the deliverables are. This is what this pitch is for. I thought that was kind of interesting. I haven't really seen that. I'm sure you've seen that a number of times. I am not a producer, so I do not see as many pictures as Stephen does. And then here we have our tone slide. So upbeat, fun, inviting, energetic, diverse, stylish, dynamic, playful. These are a lot of adjectives. And so for me personally, I kind of want to see some, I know we kind of hit on all this in the style frames, but maybe some references, even if they're not yours, maybe pulling in some references from other brands. I don't know how you feel about this, Stephen, but I do see this a lot in pitches where, people will kind of give these short descriptions of tone and approach. And sometimes I kind of just want to see what they're actually thinking, because someone's upbeat, someone's inviting, someone's energetic, maybe, another person's, different set of adjectives. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, writing a lot of briefs, I struggle with this a lot. Do I spend a lot of time on powerthesaurus.com? I do. Synonyms are great. Adjectives are great. My general philosophy on a lot of pitches, though, is to get to the meat of it as quickly as possible. And so it's nice to restate all of the deliverables, the aspect ratios and whatnot, but I'd kind of throw it at the bottom because I don't need to lead with that. Like it's a given. I kind of understand that. And again, if you put yourself in the position of a client who has to look at 20, 30, 40 pitches, they've already got a busy day. There's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of these are going to be misses, right? And so they're, in some cases, looking for reasons to pass, right? And so the more obstacles you remove from them getting to the meat of what's important in your pitch, the better you are. It's not a make or break thing for any pitch. It's just thinking about things from like a statistical standpoint, right? And so if I open this pitch and I go right into animation style, maybe I could have used an introductory page, but like here we are, we're in the meat of this. This looks cool.
Yeah, this is such a great slide because it shows your style frames, and he has such a unique approach to the animation for this project. So basically, it sounds like from his description here, he would film actual talent with clothing from Burlington, posing in front of the camera, and then they would then take those stills those videos and animate over them to make this like really kind of hyper realistic feel to the animation style. What's going through your head, Stephen, as you're kind of hearing about this approach? Do you have any concerns about production timeline, clearances, costs?
Not actually, like in terms of like production timeline and whatnot. Definitely on production timeline. Not really cost, clearances, anything like that. I guess I'll tell you why I like this first. For 2D animation and motion graphics, oftentimes I think it risks feeling so simple that it doesn't feel ownable, to use sort of like a brand term, in the sense that like, you see a motion graphic video and it could be anyone's video, right? It's hard to distinguish it in the category. And you don't see a lot of 2D animation like this. It's not super hard to do. It can be more time consuming, but if you go out there and you shoot a bunch of live action photography and you draw over it, you can kind of crank that out in a little bit more aggressive pace than if you were to draw it from scratch. And I think that it works really well when you need an animation style that feels a little elevated, if you want to use that term, or more mature, more adult, right? Because when you look at this, it looks stylish. It looks more realistic. It looks, I don't know, maybe Archer-esque, if that's a good comparison. And because it's maybe a little more grounded and realistic, it can work for more adult audiences because it doesn't read like kids animation, which is a risk that you take anytime you go down the route of 2D animation for something that feels more mature, right? We're trying to sell clothing to adults, right? So it doesn't need to feel very childlike.
I love that note because I think you're right. Oftentimes, motion graphic 2D animation can feel very cutesy, and and not distinct, right? I see, like sometimes I feel like I watch one animation video and it kind of has that same tone because just simply because the graphics they're using are somewhat like cute and fun, but it doesn't really give me a sense of the brand.
Yep. But this is stylish. So this was a good instinct. However, to your point, from a timing standpoint, yeah, I'm nervous, right? Because this is more work in many ways. You can accomplish more in a shorter period of time than if you were just doing 2D animation from scratch. But this is also more detailed, so it kind of offsets some of that time savings potentially. And again, like, it looks great, right? But like, since that timing concern is there, I'd want to make sure that I spent a lot of time addressing how I could get this done in the 3 days.
Yeah, especially in terms of styling, because for me, a big thing that the brand will want to have, a say in is just like what looks are being put together here for these actors that you're then going to draw over to make sure they just feel on brand.
Yeah. And to your point too about sort of like releases, talent, locations, and whatnot, if you're shooting live action but you're animating over it, you don't really need all that, because you're not really using the talent's likeness. You're not necessarily using a location, right? I mean, you could shoot this in your backyard, your bedroom, whatever, right? Because in the end, you're animating over it.
Right.
So it's not something that people think about, which is partially why I like it. But it is a little bit easier in that sense. You don't have to worry about some of those same concerns. Even lighting is probably important to a degree, because, if you look at that image on the left, the sort of shading is really cool, and you might want to capture that. So you might want to shoot it well. But you still don't necessarily have to if you've got good instincts as an animator.
Right. The other thing too, I guess, that came to mind is just that, the clothes are animated. Obviously, like the way that this animation is done, it's very realistic and you can really get a sense of the clothes. But my concern, just from a brand perspective, is just losing the quality of the fabric and just the options that people have when they're shopping, and whether or not, for me, when I'm shopping, would I feel more inclined to click on something where the clothes look animated or where the clothes are photorealistic?
Yeah, and so that's where, if I was going to put my money, that's probably what presented the biggest obstacle for Burlington. And again, they weren't explicit in saying that you needed to show actual product. So I'd read it as, I can avoid showing actual product, but it's risky, and it has to be such a compelling approach that it transcends that. So, some brands could do it, but when you're trying to buy something as tactile and tangible as clothing, I think it's even more risky, right? Like, you can see occasionally there are like 2D animated like car commercials, but at the end of the day, auto brands know, like, it's, seeing that really sexy Nissan come around the corner in downtown LA or something. It's really hard to transcend the power of that realistic image.
Right. And just the shoppableness, that's not a word, but of the video, right? Because I'm like,
it's not like
I can't buy this, right? I can't buy
it's not, I want shorts from Burlington. It's, I want those shorts.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So getting into the breakdown, I think they did a really nice job just kind of breaking down each of those product themes that were brought up or asked for by the client in the brief. So starting with the jeans promo, this is just a really smart use of the logo, having it as kind of like an interactive element within the video. It's really, like, I think, well done here.
Yeah. And again, like, ownable being a term that I think is nice for anyone to think about when they put together a pitch. Like, this feels ownable. This feels cool. This feels distinctive. So again, Ian, awesome instincts across the board here. Right.
Yeah, creative instincts. So he gives a couple of different options, and he mentions that there would be some movement, between these frames. And then he kind of goes into the different doodles he can use. Again, I think you have such a sophisticated style here. I would almost not do any doodles, because just the look and feel already doesn't. I think this kind of goes back to just being too cutesy with 2D animation. So I'd like to see what these would maybe look like in those style frames, because they do seem a little contrast to what you're looking for.
I kind of liked them.
Yeah,
I can see them being cool. I think that's ultimately sort of like a taste thing, not necessarily a good or bad thing. So.
And he gives a bunch of different options for what these elements could look like.
I wasn't really sure how to read that page. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I was like, wait, is this like some kind of code I need to crack?
Is this a secret?
Yes. Again, I think just from you have such a tight pitch already, I would almost remove some of these slides because they feel a little superfluous too. I think you'll get down to those conversations around typography and just kind of those fun elements once you're, working with the client. That's my opinion. I don't know, Stephen, you may have a totally different opinion here.
I didn't need that one slide, but it doesn't really hurt that much.
Yeah.
Especially since it's further down in the pitch at that point.
Mm-hmm. So then we get into the fitness. He does a script for activewear. Kind of more, again, just style frames for every single one of these product categories that the client is looking for. He does something a little different for the Baby Depot promo, where, he kind of has this is like one option where it's sort of similar to the other ones, and another option where you can actually see the different products that they offer. I think because Burlington's probably not really associated with having all these different types of products for kids, it's pretty smart to sort of visualize that in a different way. So I do like the differentiation here between the first two product themes and this theme, and how you're kind of thinking through, like, when you think of Burlington, I do think of adult clothing. I don't necessarily think of cribs and pacifiers and, all these different things that people can buy for their kids. So I think this is kind of a smart approach here. The style is pretty different in terms of the look of these little, I don't know what we call them, but little bubbles here. But I think it could work within the full suite.
Yep. Super cool.
Awesome job, Ian. Thank you for letting us share that.
One last point I'll make on this, the frame you were just looking at.
Yeah. I can go back. Sorry.
Yes. So this and a few of the other examples where you see like the multiple different options. The first time we saw it with the bee and the woman standing in the bee, it wasn't immediately clear to me that those were options and not sort of like storyboarded actions for what the bee's movement could be. It's a minor point.
Yeah, so that's very true. I just assumed it was a storyboard, like scene one or screen one, screen two, screen three. So that's, yeah. And you're right. And here it's actually conveyed as options. So that's a good point.
Yeah. So, small thing, but good thing to think about how people are viewing things. Because again, the more obstacles you can take away, the clearer you can make things, the more you think about user experience with your pitch, the better position you'll always be.
Yeah. And then, so this is our next pitch from Becky. It's for the same brief, so we won't go over the brief again. But here's their first link. So I think we can see that, I think something that jumps right off the bat for me is that it's live action. So again, I'm not really getting a sense of their animation capabilities. Interestingly enough, their second link is an animated spot. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that.
Aquí está el concreto que es para todos. Y si necesito pagos a meses sin intereses, para todos. Si lo quiero pagar en obra, para todos. Y si necesito asistencia técnica, para todos.
So yeah, this is definitely, I think in terms of, what the ask is, much more aligned. So I would definitely put this first in your links to past work.
But, and this is one of my, favorite things to keep coming back to in terms of like links and how you structure them and the context you provide and everything. As we go through this pitch, I noticed that there are 3 different places in the pitch where we're seeing links to past work.
Yes.
There's the actual links to past work section where we open with that live action video, and then we see this, and then there are a couple others. There's a link section in the actual treatment doc.
Yeah, here they are.
And then there's other past work links at the bottom of their treatment doc. And so the big video you're on right here, if you play this real quick.
Sure.
This right here is what I would have led with.
Yeah, it has that motion graphic kind of cut out. And what's really awesome is that Becky actually put together a great proof of concept video that I think really shows kind of, the brand exactly what they would be doing. I agree with you, Stephen. I think this kind of lines up most with those types of skills that they'd be using, in terms of both motion graphics and animation. But yeah, I did notice that their links were all different and in all different places. So I think you think of like the links to past work section as the place where you would consolidate all of your links.
Yeah. So, like, again, thinking about it, when we talk about like relevance, the idea of leading with that first live action video because it was for a retailer feels like it kind of makes some sense, right? Like, I'm pitching on Burlington. Well, I've done some other retailer work. I'm going to lead with the retailer work. At the end of the day, though, because it's a 10 to 15 second spot and I'm pitching, motion graphics and animation, it's more relevant to demonstrate that you can execute what you're pitching than that you've worked in a similar vertical before. So like if you were pitching on, an auto brand, right? And they wanted you to do some, authentic story about a driver whose truck saved their life or whatever, right? You could throw a Ford spot there that was 15 seconds long and a pure commercial and be like, I've worked with cars before. But if you've done a similar authentic story style video, that's more relevant to what you're pitching. So it did make sense. It wasn't, a bad instinct to lead with that live action video. But at the end of the day, I think it's more effective to go with that live action. And the big video uses photographs of product with really stylish and colorful dynamic motion graphics and animation. That for me was like, oh, these guys could kill this. So I would have led for that. I think another motivator that often leads people to include different past work links in their treatment than in the past work section is that they don't want to be redundant. But I think that it's helpful to be redundant because unless you offer context on why those sections are different, somebody might skip over one and miss important stuff, or have to try and figure out why these links are different than these links. And in this case, because there are different links in 3 different sections, I'm all over the place. Like, what's the most relevant section for me to look at? If I'm looking at 30 pitches, I'd like to just go to one place and be like, this is the work. Oh, this work is great. And then I can skip over everything else.
Yeah, I think that's such a great note about, because we're always saying like, put your most relevant links first, links first, but we never really define that for people. I think we kind of take for granted that like, oh, they'll know what that means. But I do think, you should always I think you're absolutely right. Prioritizing execution and creative style and techniques should always go before vertical and subject matter or just topic, I guess. So yeah, great note there. I actually want to like go back and update the Tongal 101 right now because of that.
Yeah. Like if somebody has to dig for the most relevant past work, then you haven't done the best job that you can do.
Yeah. And I think that's on us because we haven't been super clear about that too.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So they did put together an awesome proof of concept video. I think this is such a great opportunity, especially because they didn't have like a whole bunch of animation in their portfolio, to just show like, this is what we plan to do. This is how we plan to execute it. So I'm gonna go ahead and play that and we can discuss.
Jeans can go with everything. Come and check it out yourself. Jeans from $9.99 to $14.99. I love Burlington. Los jeans se ven bien con todo.
And they do a Spanish version here too, which is awesome. So yeah, I think this is such a smart way to just basically show, use that pitch video field to upload something that just really shows the client, what you're planning to do.
And
I'm going to get a hot take from Steven, I can tell.
Yeah. So a call out on proof of concept videos. They're inherently a little risky. Most of the time, I think they help a lot because, again, if you're working with a brand that doesn't necessarily make content all the time, you're always going to be asking them to sort of use their imaginations and see what's on the page and imagine what it's going to look like in video. That's hard, right? Like, it's hard for me sometimes. And And doing a proof of concept video is kind of like saying, this is what we're going to do. This is literally what we're going to do. However, the proof of concept video isn't the final video. And I think that the risk you're taking is that if you're saying like, this is in the vein of what we're going to do, but we're going to do so much more if you greenlight us and give us money, then it might look like your video is just not that great. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's nice to sort of explain and again, provide some context on how does this proof of concept differ from what you do if we gave you money and set you loose.
Yep.
So is the animation going to be smoother, more polished, or are we going to have some like cool background, visual design? Like if, again, thinking about that big video, right? There was so much color, was so dynamic. The visuals were so rich, right? And when I'm looking at that proof of concept video, it was white, mm-hmm. With some Burlington colored little, motion graphic little icon-y things. And I get the sense of what they were trying to do. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's easy to figure out what the message is. There's a lot to be said for that. But, is that all we're going to do? Because, this is a little weird too. Like if you can just do it, the exact video you're going to deliver in the pitch video, like, why do they need to give you a lot more money if you're not going to do a lot of extra work?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a human nature thing, right? Like if you've already done it, what else is there to do? And so even if ultimately the final video looked super similar to the proof of concept video, I'd still make sure to include some sort of section in the treatment where you address, or maybe this is like a title card before the proof of concept video opens, where you address, this is a rough version of what we're thinking, and we're going to do a whole lot of other stuff. Again, it's just human nature, right? If your video, because you had the time, was like basically the final video, if it's super awesome, great, you'll win. But if it's really simple, even if the end result was going to be simple, they're just going to wonder like, well, I mean, you already did it. Like, we want to do more.
I do love that oftentimes our pitch feedback lives do touch on like human nature and psychology. I think that's really useful information, and I totally agree. Like it's an awesome proof of concept, but if you do plan to do more and layer more on top of that, make sure to address that as well. We have a question from Denver Bailey. I'll go ahead and pull it up here. So Denver says, should we include links in the treatment or just utilize the designated section when pitching?
I think it's helpful to include links both in the designated section and also in the treatment. Again, just thinking about sort of like practicality, oftentimes the teams that we're working with, the clients that we're working with, will be using the Tongal website for almost everything. But it's likely or possible that they have a media agency who's going to look at the pitch, or that CEO who never really uses the website and doesn't know technology or something like that. And they might be shooting the treatment around as like, hey, take a look at this. This gives us a good idea of the pitch that we want to move forward with. And if you don't include the past work in there at all, there's a chance that someone may miss out on seeing your past work. It's not a major concern, but it's also pretty easy for you to just kind of copy and paste it and throw it at the back of your treatment.
Right.
And the only other thing I'll say on that is if in your treatment, you're talking about something you might do and there's something you've done in the past that's really relevant, that can be an area where you can call out an individual video and say, we want to do this because we've done something just like it before in this.
Exactly.
I just wouldn't introduce a brand new video when you do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because it's very easy to miss the differences between the links, especially if they're not embedded as like video images. So let's go ahead and take a look at the pitch from Becky. So they have a nice title page here. Talk about tone here. So it looks like they're kind of using some of the same language from the brief, which I think is always smart to kind of recycle some of the language, because we do try to, point you in that direction. So yeah, it looks like they have, so I'm assuming these are some of the cutouts they plan to use for their approach, which is very different from the other approach, which is basically using cutouts of the images of clothing with some motion graphics layered on top. I do get the sense that this would probably be a little more shoppable for people because you're using real products. Let's see here. And then execution. So they talk about, we will work with you to verify that all info is correct. Then we will proceed to the storyboard to explain the animation step by step. The art will be generated in Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator animation. So I think this is a very almost literal execution of what they plan to do. Usually when we talk about execution, I would say we're more interested in like your creative approach.
And then this is the only place the big video appears.
Right, and it is very kind of similar in terms of techniques of what they'd be doing. So here I would really focus execution not just on like the equipment and the tools you plan to use and the process you plan to implement between you and the client, but also to just talk about your creative vision. What's the color palette? What are some of the animation styles that you plan to use? Explain your animation style, why it stands out, things like that. So I would really lean into those aspects of execution. And then they have another section for links to past work. So it's a pretty short brief, which is totally fine because you guys did put together a proof of concept video. I would never dock a brief for being short. But Steven, is there anything here that's like missing to you? I did take out the getting to know us page, but
By the
yeah.
way, correction. I just noticed that the big link is there too. I was wrong. It appears in 2 places.
Okay. For a short brief, do you feel like there was anything else that should have covered?
Yeah, one thing that wasn't super clear to me is whether the different videos would be different, or this might not be a real consideration, but someone might wonder, like, do they know that they have to make all 3 videos? Mm-hmm. That's totally happened before, where someone gets a green light and all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, I have to make all the videos. So when I look at this, because the proof of concept is one of the 3 videos, and because we almost entirely talk about jeans here, I wonder, like, do we know that we're making them all? Does the approach differ for the different videos? How would it differ? It's totally cool to focus on one video in a suite and use that as like your template for the other ones. But I think it helps to address how that template changes for other videos in a suite.
Yeah, and I think in the brief, they did want you to address those 3 product categories. So it seems like there may have just been a miscommunication here on whether or not they needed to produce those 3 videos. So yeah. I think kind of going back through the brief, making sure, you're checking all the boxes and that, you do have an approach for not just the denim one, but also the active wear and the baby and the baby depot. So yeah, thanks guys again for letting us.
Hold on, I have two other things.
Oh, sure.
I never stopped talking. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you have like 5 more minutes though? Because we are going to go over time.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Oh crap! I just forgot what I was going to say too. No.
Oh no.
So these 2 pitches, right? One is really stylish and it's so much more animated. This one, especially if you looked at the proof of concept video, feels so much simpler. And oftentimes people confuse simplicity with something not being very good, right? Complexity doesn't necessarily mean that something is better. So that really stylish, realistic 2D animation could be very compelling. At the end of the day, if it's up to my taste, like, I like the stylish thing. However, clients have a lot of experience and maybe a lot of testing and data with what works best for their audience. And so this approach, even though it's probably simpler based on that proof of concept video, it could be really helpful for the client because they might know that their audience responds better to very direct messaging and simpler executions, right? So it's not necessarily the case that you have to be very elaborate. And I wouldn't look at this pitch as being any worse or less effective because it took something that's a little bit simpler.
Right. I think that's a very good note. So that gets us into our last pitch from Sujan, who pitched on the Getting Back to Football live action and editing video project. Stephen, I know you're on this one, so do you want to give like a quick kind of overview of this brief here?
Yeah, so this one got delayed a bit. I'll say if anyone who pitched on this one is paying attention, because this was a pretty insane sprint to try and create some content before week 2 of the NFL season, which is, like in a week and a half. But the idea of this really is on-location experiences, does a lot of the live events at football games. Because of COVID, they can't do almost any of their live events. And so what they were looking for was some sort of like cool, anthemic live action video, whether it's actual shot live action or stock footage or maybe some motion graphics, that kind of communicates the idea that, like, we're all missing the sort of live experiences that we could have had, that when we're able to engage with them again, on-location experiences is going to be there. Mm-hmm. So it's about getting back to football, and in the short term, trying to compare some of the things that we're doing at home with our family, with our friends in a small scale to the kind of things that we can do when we finally get back to football. So I look forward not just to the games, but the kind of experiences that I get at the stadium.
Yeah, and we were very impressed with Sujan's pitch. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, he's only 13, and he did a really nice job of creating a proof of concept. We'll go ahead and take his links to past work. Again, he's still developing his body of work, but we were just so impressed with the work that he did do on this brief. And clearly he paid a lot of attention to the executional mandatories. I know he asked us a lot of questions in the forums. So overall, just really great job. So first, I'll show you this kind of stop motion, or not really stop motion, but sort of kind of a fun video that he did with a recipe.
I like how we have the camcorder with record in the top left.
Yeah, I think that's so funny. It's very cute. So I like that we can see some of his editing technique here. Clearly this, visually this video, can be done by a lot of different people, but I think just the fact that he's using all these different editing techniques in it really shows that he's flexing his muscles there. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the proof of concept that he sent in. Stephen, do you have any other notes on that, on his?
No, I have some general thoughts I'll get into in a second.
Okay,
also, sure. Tucker, I'll weigh in on your comment in a sec too.
Yeah.
All right, I think we got the idea.
Yeah, I love the juxtaposition of like people at home, this like single football player like grasping for this football. Like there's something like that he's building in this, like an emotional tension that I really enjoy. Also sound design, like pretty impressed by his music choices and kind of how he uses it throughout.
So a couple things to kind of like flag for people practically, right? When putting together like proof of concept videos, in terms of use of stock footage and other stuff, I noticed when putting this project together that there's like no stock video photography on most of the services for the NFL. The NFL just kind of controls all of their stuff. So that like iStock, football player grasping thing, is pretty limited. But like for a proof of concept video, you can use anything, literally anything. Especially if you're just trying to sort of communicate the feel of something that you might shoot, and Sujan's not trying to shoot something here, but go on YouTube, rip some videos, take some shots, right? Like if the proof of concept video is just trying to demonstrate what you can do if somebody gives you a budget, man, go to town. Like don't limit yourself to stock imagery. At the same time, sometimes people don't include stock imagery in their proof of concept videos because they don't like the iStock, watermark, which, fine, I don't like it either, but what are you gonna do?
We look past that. It's totally fine.
Yeah, we look past that. But again, like there's no limitation, right? Like you can use any visual you want for that proof of concept as long as it communicates what you're trying to do. The other thing I'd say here, in terms of the edit and the proof of concept, even if you don't have a script or you're not totally sure what you're gonna say, this is a video that's going to be heavy on either VO or text on screen. You may not have the script yet. You may not have the time to write out a script. You may not be sure if the script is right. The project might say that we're going to help develop the script with you after the client gives you more messaging information or brand guides or something. I think it's still helpful to include all of the elements of the video in your proof of concept. So it might say like, this is an inspiring line about family. This is an inspiring line about the game, right? But it then gives the viewer an idea of where text might appear, how you're going to use the text, the feeling that you're going to communicate, the connection you're going to make between this visual and that visual, or this visual and the messaging. So that's one thing I'd always think about. Look, you don't have to have the script. It can be a really rough version of the script. It can be a bad script, right? But it still gives you a little bit more to work with.
Yeah, and to see where the text would lie on the screen too would be helpful, just to make sure, that it's going to that it's all going to kind of work on a smaller screen if someone's watching this, on their phone, etc.
Yeah. And then to his past work, again. I'm so incredibly impressed that this is a pitch that came in from a 13-year-old. Sujan, you're awesome.
You have a really bright future.
Similar to what I was saying at the top, like, a lot of these videos are 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes longer, however long they are. And it's always more to ask someone to watch longer videos, right? Especially if the creative ask is really short. And so it's super important to sort of edit short videos for them to look at. So a lot of those are really cool, but the other thing about long videos is that there's so many more variables in a longer video. And so you're asking someone to do more work in interpreting that. So what I mean is, if I have to watch a 5-minute short film that you made, not only am I now questioning, like, can you do a 15 or a 30? But I'm also wondering, like, is this video good because the performance is really good? Is that a reflection of the director? Is the lighting in the scene reflective of how they can light normally? All of a sudden, there are all these other things that are impacting how good or bad the video might be. And so the benefit to taking your longer videos and editing shorter ones is that you can control for more of those variables.
Right. I think that's all very, very sound advice. So let's go ahead and go through his pitch. I will say Sujan made a really nice use of our project forums, asking the producers questions. That's always a resource for you as you're working on your pitches. So here he gives a synopsis of the story. So music will be uplifting, but also exciting. It will show fan clips together, watching shows and the clips of football players with small pauses in between, edited with the music to get a dramatic feel, which I definitely saw in that video. And there will be text on screen. So I think that goes towards your point, Stephen, of just including what those templates would look like, talking about our current situation and getting to our target market, adult fans and college alumni. Each cut down will be edited to perfection right along with the music. Awesome. So that's more like execution than I would say story. because well, I guess you are including kind of that narrative context of, talking about, kind of what everyone's going through right now and our eagerness to get back to football. And then here and I love that he used our Tongal pitch template. This is something that you guys can download from the Tongal 101 page. So he provides a mood board here. So all these pitches will be supporting to help dramatize this video. The middle one will be flashed along with the next in the video. The video will have text on the video. So I think for mood board, we're actually looking more for, they don't have to be images that you're necessarily using in your video. It's really just about kind of setting the tone for the video.
Another thing here that applies to anyone's pitches, not just a 13-year-old, is I see sometimes that people focus on the coolest parts of the video. And all of a sudden, the mood board, all the imagery focuses on the coolest parts. But looking at the video as a whole, there might be huge chunks of that video that aren't necessarily addressed. And I say that because this is a mood board. It's dramatic, it's uplifting, it's optimistic. And I'm seeing a lot of the football imagery. But part of the story we're trying to tell is about the people who aren't at the stadium, who are at home, and their current lived experiences. So this gives me some of the mood, but it's missing sort of almost half of the story. Mm-hmm. And it's a common problem that I see. So it's always something to think about because, look, I mean, my pitch is going to look so much cooler if it's all football action shots and like cool crowd shots. But it doesn't necessarily reflect everything that I'm going to have to do in the end.
Right, because you are asking for, showing families together, different households together, watching football and TV together. So yeah, I do think you want to include that in your mood board if that's really a key part of the story that the brand's trying to tell. So from execution, we'll take high quality stock clips using the money allotted and then compile them together to help prove the point that through this year will look different for football fans. It will be a year to remember and to get them ready for this year's different experience with on-location experiences. So again, I think you do touch on kind of the more technical stuff, but I would also use execution as an opportunity to talk about really your creative approach here and get into some of the techniques that you plan to use for editing and really, sharpening that message throughout. And he includes his past work here as well. So great job, Sujan, really impressive. We hope to see you come back for more stuff on our site and that you learned a little bit and you can apply these tips to your next pitch. I know, Stephen, you want to take some time to answer Tucker's question. And then I do have one more question that I skipped over for every pitch, but this one I will ask it for this one. Is it feasible for the budget? And that's something a question you should always ask, when you're putting together your pitch.
Yeah, all those pitches are feasible for the budget. Next question.
Yeah, usually it's like a yes or no for us. So.
Tucker asked about sort of whether or not you should include the software that you're using and some of the more technical components of production. Sure, that can be helpful. It's definitely something that I'd put at the end because, again, if you lump clients into two categories, people who make content and people who don't, it's safer to assume that people who don't make content for a living won't understand a lot of that because it's kind of like, you're the mechanic, right? And so when someone comes to you with a problem they need to solve, a thing they need you to do, like, they don't know what kind of hydraulic lift you're going to use for the car, what tools you're going to use. They kind of just need to know that, like, when it comes out of the shop, the bumper's going to be fixed and the tires are going to be nice. That's an oversimplification, maybe not the best analogy. That said, it can be helpful if it has a material difference on the look and feel of something. You can share it at the back of your pitch. And then people like me or the other producers will see it. And it could be helpful for us in some way. I mean, ultimately, I don't see like a lot of major differences in what you're going to use, because they can all kind of do the same thing. It's occasionally people use like the specific cameras they're going to use and the lens packages they're going to use. And those things are cool, but most clients aren't going to know one from the other. And it's so rarely going to be a make or break thing that I don't know that it's necessarily worth the effort. If you do include it though, throw it at the back, no harm.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate it. We're sorry we went a little over time, but I think it's always worth your while to watch these. Again, if you have any other pitches that you'd like us to review on Pitch Feedback Live, feel free to send them over to us at info@tongal.com. We do try to do this, I think, every 2 months. So we have a little bit of time to curate those and keep on tongling. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.